Okay, I think we're ready to get started. So welcome to the NTP Working Group. This is the note well that you have seen on many occasions. And you've seen it several times this week, so you're good to go. I think they just adjusted my volume. I feel louder all of a sudden. Our agenda for the day. This is the agenda and administrative section of the agenda. We have a bunch of really short stuff to discuss. We're going to be marching through a whole bunch of our work items and discussing the status and what the next steps for each of them are. Do I have somebody who's willing to watch Jabber for me? Rich will, thank you. I know that Dieter is going to be working on minutes. Is there somebody else that's willing to take notes and help him with minutes? Oh, you strategically did not bring a laptop just for that. Anybody? Anybody? It always fascinates me how everybody looks strategically, looks down when it comes time to do minutes. So, experience, yes, exactly. All right, so the rest of the agenda is TikTok status, then NTP status, the guidelines for defining packet timestamps. In general, the way I try to organize these meetings is our working group drafts, our adopted working group drafts first, individual contributions second, and then any other business third. There's a little bit of variation in this today because of various scheduling considerations that we have, people that will be joining the meeting late, people that will be leaving early. So that's the reason for this. Guidelines, and then we have basically 3 security items on the agenda. The NTS draft that we currently have, a little bit of discussion on NTS implementations and interoperability, and NETA's presentation on a secure selection and filtering mechanism. Then we're going to talk about the BCP. There's a quick item on leap second list maintenance, and I'll describe what that is in a little bit when I get to that. And then the rest of our documents, interleave modes, implementing time, ref IDs, the correction field, short extension fields, the Yang data model, additional extension field proposals, any other business, and wrap up. In the any other business, is Harlan on? Harlan is on, okay. I didn't notice yesterday, but I saw today that there is an additional draft on the ref ID for leap smear, so we'll just talk about that briefly in the any other business section. So is there any agenda bashing? Nope. Alrighty then. So on the TikTok working group status, we have 2 documents that we are progressing. The first one being the Yang data model for 1588. And that has gone out for a second IETF last call. Go ahead, Suresh.
Yeah, Suresh Krishnan. So like what I've done is like put in like a kind of disclaimer which says the standard itself is not openly available. So there was like an issue in the IESG that some people thought like, okay, maybe because the standard is not openly available, it didn't get good enough review. So Karen made an arrangement to get a copy of the document if somebody asked for it. So we done a second IETF last call with the note in there. It says like, hey, if you want the 1580 document, we'll get a copy for you. Until now, nobody's requested one. So once that second last call finishes, like I'll just push it back to the IESG and try to get the discusses cleared based on this criteria.
Okay.
So we had a discussion regarding this, like at the Sunday meeting of the IESG. It's not related to this draft. It's generally when getting a document requires paying for it. Like, so should we do standard track documents in the IETF like that? Okay. And we haven't concluded on it, but that's probably not going to block this document anyway. Okay, so but that's if something happens, that's going to be IETF wide. It's not going to be just for TikTok.
Right. So the consideration here is the second document that the TikTok working group is working on is the 1588 enterprise profile, and that's going to have the same issue.
Right.
So that needs to be submitted to you real soon now.
So if you do it soon, it's going to be grandfathered.
Yeah. Okay. So that's motivation to do it really soon.
Right. Like, yeah. So that's, I don't think that's going to happen in a hurry because it's not something we can do trivially because there's other class of documents that are not freely available either. So like freely meaning it's not just about money. It's also, bless you. Okay. Yeah. So one of the things is like, there was like a document I heard which cost $40,000 to buy. And that was like a normative reference for a document. So we're not at least in this class. So is it going to be like some dollar value or is it like more of, I would think an idea that people are posting? That's something that's not clear to me. So once that's clear, I'll probably write something up as an IESG statement to the community and then go from there. But I don't think it's going to happen if you send it to me in the next month or so.
Okay. I mean, I do think from a philosophical standpoint, having access to the documents is a good thing. But then I also think from a good of the industry, good of the internet perspective, these other standards exist and we need to deal with them.
Right.
So,
Exactly. Yeah,
anyway.
makes sense.
All right. So thank you for that. Did you have anything else you want to, do you want to go to the mic and talk about the?
If you continue to NTP, I just want to stay here, but like that's the only thing I had about the TikTok.
Oh, actually, I was speaking to the Yang. One of the Yang editors was looking at me like he was ready to say something. So,
thank you, Yuan Jiang. Just in summary, we have undergone young doctor's review of this document, and there's no technical issues found there, but just sentence need to make it clear. So we have a consensus how to revise it in the next revision. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, long. So if the thing is like it's just a sentence as an editorial clarification, just send it to me. Don't even publish a new draft. I'll just put it as an RFC ed note and pass it. But if it's something substantive, then run it through the working group. But if it's just like some clarification text, just send it to me. You don't need to publish a new draft. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
okay. So that was the two TikTok documents. On the IETF, on the NTP, so that's it for TikTok. The intention right now is when we complete these two documents, we will close that working group and move all of the time-related work that we're doing to NTP, to the NTP working group. So on the NTP working group status documents that we weren't going to talk about today, the first one is the MAC document that has gone to the ISG. It's out for working group last call, or is it completed? Has it finished the IETF last call?
Yeah.
All right.
I think it's like it finishes like next Monday, I think.
Oh, that's right. I wrote it.
So what I've done is I've extended the last call. So because the IETF week came in between, so I just extended it to make sure that people still had a chance to comment on it, because people usually say like, oh, don't run it through IETF week. But I wanted to get it on the next telechat, which is 25th of November. So I didn't want to leave it until the IETF finishes to start the last call. So it will finish, I think, the Monday after the IETF.
Okay.
Okay, so people can still get to comment on it. Like, so the period, 2-week period finishes, but I added a week for the IETF in between.
Okay.
So it's on the telechat on the 25th, the first telechat of the IETF.
Okay, excellent.
Okay. And I already ran it through the SecAD before, like kind of explain why choice of algorithm was the question they had, and I already ran it through them. So shouldn't be a major issue, but.
So it should move forward.
Right. I think the only question that might come up is the backward compatibility. Like, how do we figure that out? Right. That's probably something that might come up. Was it? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Anshul said it's addressed with agility.
Yeah, we probably need to use the mic for all conversations because of we have a long list of remote people. So,
NTP supports algorithm agility, so that was addressed, I guess, in the document. So I don't think that should be a problem.
Okay. And the second document that's not on the agenda is the control messages, which needs to go to the IESG as soon as the Shepherd writes up the Shepherd write-up.
There's also the other document, the BCP document.
I put that separately on the agenda. Do you, because we have a bunch of work on that, and Dennis is going to talk to it, and he's online. So
okay, so the one thing I kind of wanted to focus on, like from the working group side, is like, should it be a BCP or not, right? That's kind of something that came up during the last call.
Right.
So what should be the status? So in addition to anything else you want to discuss, right? I just want you to think about that too.
Okay. Actually, Dennis and Dieter and I had some fairly extensive conversations about that. And I asked for some review from Brian Haberman to look at it and give me his opinion on whether he thought it should be informational or BCP. And his assessment was that it should be a BCP. So and Dennis is going to talk about this more, but we intend to do a scrub. Once we finish addressing all of the IETF last call comments, we tend to do a scrub of the language to make it read a little bit more like a BCP. I think the comment from somebody was to get rid of the wishy-washy language.
That's fine. I think there was like something in the metadata that kind of made me think it was an informational. I think it was either the Shepherd write-up or the
Shepherd.
Okay.
The Shepherd write-up might have failed on that.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
So that was my fault. I indicated in the Shepherd write-up it was informational because I wasn't paying attention. In my head, a BCP is informational, but it's actually not technically informational. it's what is it? The all caps versus the little. So anyway, we'll talk about that more when we get to that point in the agenda. So next on the agenda is this guidelines for defining packet timestamps. This still doesn't quite.
Okay, thanks. My name is Tal. I'm from Huawei. This draft is joint work with Joachim Fabini and Al Morton. The goal of this draft, there are two goals actually, and it's intended for people who design network protocols that require the use of packet timestamps. And the goals are, first of all, to define a set of recommended timestamp formats that you will typically be able to choose from. And the second goal, if you don't think any of the recommended timestamp formats fits what you need, this draft also defines guidelines that specify how a new timestamp should be defined. These are the two goals of the draft. The status of the current draft, we haven't made any changes since the last IETF meeting. The draft is currently in working group last call. We have received some comments a while ago from Miroslav, from Varner, and we intend to address these comments together with the rest of the comments in working group last call. So at this point, the next step is to complete working group last call. Any last comments will be appreciated, and we'll address these, and we'll be as responsive as possible from our perspective. Try to do this as quickly as possible. Hopefully, we can send the draft to the ISG pretty soon. Any questions or comments will be welcome.
Okay, thank you. And for those of you paying attention, that actually the working group last call notice went out about an hour ago. So it is technically in working group last call. I did extend it through the end of November because both this is IETF week and the Thanksgiving holiday coming up. So, and I expect coming out of this meeting, we're going to do a couple more working group last calls and run them in parallel, and we'll run them all until the end of November so that we can keep track of what's ending when. All right. So next we're going to talk about NTS.
So my name is Dieter Siewert. I present the update of the NTS draft. It's quite short. These are more or less the changes from the last IETF meeting. We have rewritten the abstract and we corrected the figure 5. So that's more or less editorial stuff. The draft is from the point of the authors. We all agree that the draft is now ready to be submitted to working group last call. So that would be the next step. That's it. Any question or comment?
Just to be a tad bit clearer, a tad bit more clear, we had a draft. We did the hackathon event in March. Based on that, we fed all the feedback into the document. And then in July, we had another set of excellent contributions. And at this point, all of the authors agree that the document's ready to go to working group last call, right? Is there any objections to this going to working group last call?
Daniel Franke on Jabber wanted to know if you were going to talk about 12 to 13 because not everyone goes to the interims.
12 to 13, that was the introduction of the contribution from the Swedish guys, from Marcus and Ragnar.
Right. So if you look at the draft IETF Densare NTS, then basically it was incorporating the changes they suggested there into the core NTS specification. Because of the way the document was done, it's a little bit hard to parse it because you can't really do a diff. I mean, you can do a diff between the two versions of the NTS document, but you can't do a diff between the Densare and it. So, yeah. Is that, Daniel, does that answer sufficiently what you wanted to indicate about the difference between those two drafts? Yes. Sufficient summary. Excellent. So I know this doesn't get into a lot of detail. You came to find out the status, and all we're telling you is we're going to send a document to working group last call. But this document has been progressing for quite a while. We do have some preliminary implementations of it. If there's no objection, we're going to send this to working group last call. So the next item on the agenda is to talk a little bit about implementation status and plans for interop testing. As I indicated, we have done hackathon projects in both London and in Montreal. We didn't do one here because a number of our key implementers were not coming here. So, but I know that Richard, I believe you said you were going to talk a little bit about the status of your implementation. And you need to get in the queue so we can let you talk. Are you there, Richard? I actually don't see our queue either. How do we see the queue? There we go. Okay. Richard, you ready?
Yeah. I just had never actually joined the queue before, so I wasn't sure what button to push. The short version is that last week we were able to demonstrate partial interoperability with Martin Langer's implementation. And there are some bugs which we are going to correct in order to allow full interoperability testing with Martin's version. But we are expecting to release that version for testing purposes in the very near future. The one caution I have is that this is not in any way a production-ready version of reference implementation for these drafts. In particular, we were writing to draft 12 and have not attempted to implement any of the key server.
Richard, can I ask you to turn off your video just to see if that's going to improve the audio just a tiny bit? It might, I don't know. Your audio is breaking up on this end.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to turn it off.
Okay.
Okay, there.
There you
So in any case, we're hoping within the next 2 weeks to demonstrate interoperability with Martin Langer's code. And as I was saying, this is not a production-ready release. In particular, we were writing draft 12, and we chose not to attempt to implement the idea of a key exchange server separate from the regular NTP servers. And that's something that we're going to have to talk about in NTF, how we want to do that.
Okay. I think we all understand it's not a production-ready implementation. But do you think you'll be ready to do some form of testing in the March timeframe? Is what I'm hearing. Is that be a yes?
That's a yes.
Okay, excellent. Any questions for folks for Richard? Does anybody else want to speak briefly about any implementation work they might do?
Anchal Malhotra. I am planning to do an implementation for interoperability testing in the next IETF, specifically in Go language. So if someone is interested in contributing, please let me know. Also, I think, Karen, we're going to announce some mailing list that probably will help all of us coordinate what's going on the implementation. So,
right, we were going to set up a mailing list just for different people working on implementations to coordinate. So they wouldn't be doing it on the mailing list, on the working group mailing list, but on a separate mailing list.
okay.
So look for that in the next day or two, and I will announce it on the NTP mailing list. And anybody who's interested in getting some of these initial implementations out, that'd be great. At this point, what I'm hoping is that if the working group last call goes as smoothly as I hope it will, and we get the changes incorporated into it, that we will be perhaps submitting this the end of this year or early next year for publication. All right. Anything else? Yes.
I can add Martin Langer, who had implementation we tested in London together with Martin, with Daniel's implementation. He supervised an additional project at his university that was a student project who also implemented NTS independently. So, and he also reports that they have interoperability.
You're going to need to go back to the mic. So Daniel has asked in the chat if this is going to be an NTP and NTS implementation or just NTS.
I was thinking of just NTS.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anything else on this? So anybody that's interested in implementation or testing or looking at interop, we will be organizing another effort in conjunction with the hackathon at the next IETF. So stay tuned for that. So next up is Netta, and she's going to talk about her draft. And she's a remote presenter. I thought I saw her online earlier.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Oh, excellent. Oh, that's right. I'm supposed to bring it. There we go.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, great.
Okay, great, thank you. So, hi, I'm Neta, and today I'm going to present the update that we made in the second draft of the Chronus mechanism for NTP. It's a joint work with Dani Dolev, Tal Mizrahi, and Michal Shapir. Next slide, please. So a short reminder is that we consider the following treat model, where we assume that the attacker have full control over a large function of NTP server in the pool, say quarter. And we also assume that he can both decide the content of the NTP and at the timing where the response are going to arrive to the client. And of course, we assume that he is malicious and try to shift the clients. Excuse me? No, it's okay. No. Just a moment. Can you back? Yeah, okay, thank you. In this illustration, we can see that the client gets both the good sample and the bad sample, but he can choose to use a shift time samples. Next slide. Yeah. So Chronus architecture is built on several ingredients. On the one hand, we rely on many NTP server. We generate large server pool, hundreds of servers per client in order to raise the threshold needed by the attacker. And on the other side, we create only few of them that are randomly chosen in order to avoid overloading the NTP servers. And finally, we use smart filtering in order to remove outliers and make it hard to the man in the middle to contaminate the chosen samples. Next slide, please. So in our new draft, we address the trade-off between precision and security. Chronus uses a greater variety of servers that are changing over time. It also avoids the NTP filters. This allows us to achieve provable security guarantees. However, it can also affect the precision and the accuracy. This effect is bounded by Chronus omega parameter, which is in default 25 milliseconds. This parameter expresses the time diversity between good samples and their distance from the UTC. Since it is not accumulated, a time diversion of 25 milliseconds is insignificant for many applications. For the other application where precision and accuracy are critical, we suggest the hybrid approach, where by default, NTP updates the clock, but when we face a threat or there is an evidence of attack, then we can use Chronus time. Next slide, please. So far, we got mainly two suggestions of how to combine Chronus and in the current NTP. The first one was to run Chronus externally and gather data, statistical data over a malicious server in order not to use them or avoid using them in the NTP. The second suggestion was to use Chronus as a new filter inside the NTP. We thank Dieter and Greg for the useful discussions. And next slide, I think this is it. So thank you, and I can take questions now. This is the link for the full draft.
Questions from anybody in the room? And anybody online? I don't see any. Any thoughts on what the next steps for this? At this point, this is an individual submission.
Yeah, that's correct. What we plan is to test these approaches as well as the differences in the accuracy and the precision in the client side from Chronus and the current NTP. And I hope we will get to update you in the next IETF meeting.
Okay. So you plan to, there has been some discussion of this on the list. You plan to revise it again based on that discussion? And submitted it.
Yes.
Submitted again
course.
in anticipation of the Prague meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope so.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I encourage people to take a quick look and read this, please. All right. So if there's no questions on that, the next thing on the agenda is the BCP. The BCP has gone out for IETF last call. The mailing list will have seen a lot of the traffic on that. Dennis, do you want to talk about what's been done to address all of that? I think you're going to have to, oh, there we go. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So, so I'm sure you've all seen a lot of the traffic on the mailing list. That's discussing the last call for the BCP. There were several very well thought out comments. And I think at this point, we've integrated most of the specific comments that we've seen into a new version of the draft, which will be posted. I think submissions are open again, so I can probably post it sometime the next few days. And that will be a version 8, which will address the concerns that we saw through the last call. I think that'll be version 8. Let me check. Yes. But then, as Karen alluded to, there have been a number of general comments about the language in the document and about the tone. And those are things that we intend to address in a pass afterwards, taking a look at the document as a whole, and seeing where we can strengthen the reservation or the recommendations. So we want to be able to strengthen the recommendations in certain places, but still keep the document as a general best practice guide. And there's a bit of a balance there, but we're going to go and take another stab at that. And so, at least in my mind, my view would be to submit the -8 soon, and then do a general tightening up of the language and submit a -9, and then at that point we would move forward. And I think at this point that's all I have. Do you have anything else to add, Karen or Dieter?
I did have one question. You have you've replied back to all of the comments, all of the individual comments we received, right?
I think there were some comments from the GenArt reviewers that I still need to just get back to and acknowledge, but they were more of the general type. But yes, I will be replying to those today.
Okay.
So Krishnan, Dennis, did you respond to Joe Touch and Nick? I didn't see yours.
I thought I sent those out.
Okay.
I
didn't see something passing by, but just check. If you did, that's fine. I'll go check again, but I didn't see the response to those other ones. I saw the response to Tom Petch, but that's all I saw.
Right. I can just make sure that I I see that. Yeah, I'll go through and make sure that they all got sent out.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Okay, so submissions are open, Dennis, so you can submit the revision. Do we have a time frame for the revision? We've got the revision that's going to go right away, and then there's the next one, and then the next one is when we'll go back to the IESG and say, okay, we think we're done with all the last call comments. Do we have a time frame for that next one?
I'm hoping to have that in the next week or two. It really depends on my schedule, and when I can make time for it. I've been very busy the last few weeks, and that's part of the reason why it's taken as long as it has. And so I apologize for that, but I do want to push to get this done. Certainly before the end of the month, but I'm hoping well before then.
Okay. Suresh is heading back to the mic.
Yeah, Suresh Krishnan. So, Denny, just to get an understanding of your schedule, right? So let's say like we get this wrapped up soon. If I throw it on the December 6th or something on a telechat, would you be able to be responsive around that time?
Yes, I hope to be.
Okay.
So when you say responsive by that time, you mean we need to have finished this update and the next update prior to December 6th?
Right. If I throw it on IESG eval, the other people are going to throw in positions and kind of like try to see if you can do a rev before the holidays. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Okay.
Otherwise, it gets kind of loses the momentum after the holidays, and it's hard to get back.
Right. So the I guess my point to Dan, in order for it to be effective on a telechat on the 6th, it really needs to be wrapped up like a week before
Next
that.
2 weeks, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I think we can accomplish that.
Okay. That would be fabulous.
Okay.
So the next item on the agenda is a really short one. What brought this item up initially was actually a trouble ticket that went into the IETF website. It turns out that the reason I put it next to the BCP in the agenda is that the BCP also refers to it. There is a file on the IETF. I'm looking at my notes, but there's a there's a file on the IETF website, which is a file for leap seconds, and that file is currently maintained by Julie Levine. There's a question of whether implementations still use that or not, and also we need to document the process for maintaining that going forward. So it's not a big deal. It's just something that in the process of the website IETF website being redesigned was sort of identified as something that is not what was up on the old legacy website, moved to the new website, and was sort of an orphan on the website. So I'd like some perspectives on whether this is still being used or not in the implementations, and if so, we need to document how that gets maintained in a way that's a little bit more obvious than it currently is. So thoughts from implementations?
Hi, Karen, can you still hear me?
I can still hear you.
Maybe I'm just a little confused here, but I thought that the leap second file was maintained. Well, I know it's distributed as part of the time zone database, and so I was under the impression that the maintenance of the leap second file would be the same mechanism as for the time zone database. Is that not the case?
Well, so it turns out the time zone database was transitioned to IANA, and there's an RFC that talks about how that's maintained, but the leap second file is not part of that. I'm going to hit the button and let Harlan talk. Go ahead, Harlan. Or perhaps Harlan. Harlan, we can't hear you if you're speaking. Are you muted? Still can't hear you. Harlan, you're out of the queue now, so I'm assuming you dropped off I'm not sure what happened, but, oh, now he's coming back to the queue again. Go ahead. And we still can't hear you, Harlan. The Meet Echo guys say that they can't hear you in the from their side either. So. I see Martin Bernicki has added something into the chat. And now Harlan is yelling at us. So Martin says that, in fact, the leap second file is retrieved from a time zone database file, and it's included for completeness. I think that the key is there's this one file on the IETF website that does not appear to be maintained as part of that. And I think what I'd really like is a couple of volunteers to help me clarify if there's something that needs to be updated somewhere, if this particular file is still being used, and how to do that. So if, Martin, if you understand. So I think that if I were an IETF website maintainer person, I think what I would really like to do is get rid of this file if it's not actually being used. That would be the key thing. So perhaps I'm wording the question a little bit too wishy-washy. Can we get rid of this file, and do we need it?
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Jared.
Jared Mach, Akamai. I would suggest that we remove it, especially if there's no document referencing the data file. And if it breaks something, then we can quickly submit a document stating where and why that file lives there as a reference for whatever implementations may use it.
Right.
In Jabber, Harlan says if the IETF doesn't want to maintain it, NTF will do.
So I think the point here is that if it is needed for an IETF protocol, then the IETF is happy to maintain it. We just have to document where it is maintained and how. And what we have right now is not that. So if it's neat, and what I'm hearing from Martin is that, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that aligns with what I was saying, which is that
Right.
if there is a standard that uses this, not just an implementation, but if there's a standard that requires the use of this file, that it should be documented where that file is, the format of the file, et cetera.
Right.
And it should be, and it sounds like it would be a relatively simple document. And if NTF needs it as part of their implementation, it would be best that it live, at their website under their control, as would any other NTP vendor implementation.
Right. Go ahead. You're gonna.
Yeah, Harlan says NTP uses the file.
Okay, so I think that the bottom line here is that we need to document this, and so Harlan and Martin, because you both have generously commented online, can I ask you to work with me offline to properly document this in some way? If you put yeses in the chat, I'll know that you've agreed.
I'll say, if we don't have a working group document or an IETF document that references the file, I believe it should be removed.
Right, and I think the minutes will yes, we can, right. I think what we'll do is we'll take this offline as a project, and Martin and Harlan and I will get back to you all on what the right answer is. But I think if it's not referenced by a specification, if it's not used in a protocol somewhere, we should probably get rid of it. The other possibility is to do something with IANA like we did with the time zone database. And I don't know if that makes sense or not, but anyway. So I just wanted to be sure that that was Right. So we'll add Dennis to the list of people that are willing to help on that as well. Right. So Thomas Peterson has put a link in the Jabber chat. That first one is the link that I was looking for. I thought I had put it on the minute in the agenda slide, but I didn't. I really don't think this is a very controversial issue. I think it's really simple. I think it's just a bit of housekeeping that needs to be done. And that housekeeping became more obvious when they did the website transition. So it's just something that needs to be cleaned up. So, alrighty. So next on the agenda is NTP interleave modes. I put this on the agenda. I don't know, Miroslav, if you wanted to say anything else. I know we discussed this at the virtual interim 2 or 3 weeks ago. I don't see Miroslav in the queue. Oh, there he goes. Excellent.
Hi, can you hear me?
You're breaking up a
just
bit.
a quick
Go ahead.
update. There were no changes in the document, but there was an issue raised on one of the previous meetings that not breaks the client-server interleave mode. I don't think that is an issue, and I have posted links on the list to a minimal implementation that I think demonstrates that this is not really an issue. And I think it also shows that an implementation of this protocol is quite simple. So hopefully people won't be afraid of it.
Okay. So my question for you then was if you as the author believe this was ready for working group last call?
I think it is.
Okay. Is there anybody opposed to this document going forward to working group last call? All right. Excellent. This is one I had planned to issue after this meeting as well.
Thanks.
Thank you, Miroslav. Okay. Next is Anshal on implementing time. This is where we're going to test fate. Oh, wait.
Yeah, the comment from Harlan, it requires the server to maintain state for the client, if I understand this correctly. So maybe.
Miroslav, did you want to respond to that while Anshal's getting set up?
There is a possibility
Go
to
ahead,
implement
Miroslav.
a similar approach like in PTP with the follow-up message, but for NTP that would be a problem because it would amplify the traffic. So we need to make a compromise here, and that is that we need to keep some small state for each client. It's about 16 bytes depending on the implementation, and that state can be lost and nothing bad will happen because the protocol can fall back to the basic mode. So yeah, some state it's required, but it's very small and it's not critical.
Okay. All right. Anshal?
Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about something on implementing time. This is the second draft that we submitted, and we have made changes based on the comments on the previous draft. And this work is jointly done with Christoph from PTB, Martin Huffman from OpenNet Labs, and Willem from NLNet Labs. So the motivation behind the work. So we cannot understate the importance of time in today's digital systems. So functionality and security of all the applications hinges on some notion of time. And for the implementers who implement these applications that rely on time, they have to choose from multiple clocks that are available on digital systems. And the problem is that these applications choose one of these clocks, but are oblivious to the implications of choosing one or the other clock for implementation. So the main purpose behind the document is to provide some guidance to the implementers about the trade-offs of using one or the other clocks available on the systems. So what should you expect from this document? So first, this document will, in this document, we explain different kinds of time, different kinds of methods that are used by different applications to express time. We then talk about how digital systems keep time, that is the different kinds of clocks that are available on today's digital systems and their properties. Then we discuss the trade-offs of using one or the other clock, or one clock over the other for different applications. And we hope that this will provide some guidance to the implementers to make an informed choice while implementing applications that use time. The non-scope of the document, what you should not expect from this document, what this document doesn't address, is that in all the discussions in this document, no discussion in this document is specific to architecture of any PC or any other device. Nor is it specific to any operating system. Okay. This document doesn't deal with the question of how these we'll talk about different kinds of clocks that are available on the digital system, but this document doesn't deal with the question of how these clocks are available on different PCs or other devices, like the APIs that are available. We don't talk about it in this document. And we do not recommend one time over the other for all the applications. Like, there is no set in stone final recommendation. We just provide the different properties of these times and the security properties and other properties of these time and the trade-offs of using one of the clocks over the other. But the final decision of which clock to use would vary depending on the availability of the clock on the system and the security requirements of the specific application that is under implementation. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about, and for the rest of the talk, I'll talk about how different applications express time, how different digital systems keep time, trade-offs of using these two, native versus world time, which I'll define in a moment, and then current implementation approaches towards implementing time in different applications. And then this document contains some APIs available for accessing different kinds of clocks on POSIX and Windows operating systems. So expressing time, so we define two kinds of time in which most applications express time. So the first is absolute time. Absolute time is expresses an absolute point in time. Say, for instance, November 6, 2018, a specific time. And absolute time is typically used to indicate the validity of objects which have a limited lifetime that can be shared over the network. For instance, this signature has a validity period. It's pretty old. It's expired probably. So it has 2017. This timestamp is an absolute timestamp. It refers to a particular point in time. So this is an example of how applications use absolute time. Then we have some applications express time in terms of relative time, which is a measure of the time interval that has passed from a fixed reference point. So for example, time to live, TTL values that determine the length of time for which an object is valid or usable. That uses relative time. Applications that use TTL use relative time. For instance, this is the TTL for this RR-SIG, which means that this record should be considered valid for 7598 seconds, and then it should be refetched from the source. So these are the absolute time and relative time are the two kinds of time that most applications express time. Now, how digital systems keep time, that is the different clocks that are available on digital systems. The first one, we call it native clock. This is something that is very, it's system's own perception of time. It's very subjective. It is obtained by the systems by counting the cycle, let's say counting the cycles of an oscillator, or by using process CPU times or thread CPU timers. It basically returns the difference in time between 2 points. So what are the properties of this time? It is monotonic. It would always go in one direction. It is immune to vulnerabilities from external time sources. It is not affect. It cannot be set. This time cannot be set. It cannot be set manually or from other external sources of time. Since it is not, it cannot be set. Its quality depends on the stability of the oscillator or CPU timer of the system. And there is clock drift, of course. Clock rate may vary. The clock rate of this time may vary from that of other systems since it is not adjusted for by any external sources. Then there is another notion of time that is kept by the digital systems. That is, we call it world clock. This time has the potential to be in sync with other systems, and it is obtained either by manually setting the time on your system, or some systems use hardware clock to update world clock, to update their system time, which is called world clock. And this hardware time itself is updated from an external time source. So hardware clock is generally accessed by the systems during reboot because the hardware clock is persistent between reboots, and then usually the systems switch to external sources of time such as network time protocols and other such timing protocol implementations to update world clock. What are the properties of this time? So since it is, it can be set manually or from other external sources of time, it compensates for the clock drift. So this time can be in sync with other systems. So this time has the potential to stay in sync with other systems. However, it can be set manually, it is vulnerable to misconfiguration errors. Second, hardware clock access is resource intensive, and the quality of the hardware clock may not be very high in many digital systems, which could lead to a large clock drift if it is not compensated for the clock drift. That is one reason why world clock uses external sources of time to adjust for the clock drift. And since it is adjustable by the external sources of time, it opens up the world clock to the vulnerabilities that are present in these external sources of time. So examples are, there's a lot of work that shows that these timing protocols and its implementations are vulnerable to network attacks. So these are the two kinds of, on a very broad level, two kinds of time that are available, two kinds of clocks that are maintained by digital systems. Now, how do software implementations deal with relative time in application? When applications use relative time, how do software implementations deal with? We've seen that most common approach that the implementers take is to convert relative time to absolute timestamps, to absolute time. And then this absolute time is compared with the current system time, which is the world time. And the problem is that this time, as I said, can be updated by external time sources. So it's vulnerable to all the vulnerabilities that are present in these external time sources. So, so there are other possible implementation approaches that can be used. However, in case of absolute time, there is no other option but to use the world clock. But what we talk about and discuss in this document is that in case where applications use relative time and where the implementers have to implement relative time, they should not use absolute time. Instead, they should consider using the native clock that is available on the digital systems. And we discussed the trade-offs, security trade-offs in our document. And in the end, we provide, we discuss a little bit about the APIs that are available on the POSIX and Microsoft Windows systems to obtain native time. So on POSIX system, this function clock get time provide all kinds of different times that are all kinds of different clocks that are available on this operating system. So this function takes as an argument a clock identifier, one of which may provide native time. And on Microsoft Windows, there is this function called getTickCount that would return native time. Native time. GetTickCount returns 32-bit count and 64-bit count of native time. So the basic idea behind the document is to provide guidelines to the implementers, to provide knowledge, to provide knowledge about the trade-offs of using one or the other, trade-offs of using absolute or native time or native time or absolute time for different applications, but the ultimate choice will be made by the implementers depending on the kinds of clocks available on different systems and the specific application under consideration. That'll be all. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions for Anshul? This is one energetic group, I must say. I realize it's late in the day, but okay. So this is the second. Pardon? What, can you go to the mic and say that?
Hi, Rich. So I have a problem seeing where this would go. I mean, it's not quite a survey document. It's informational. I mean, what was your plan if you had one, or you just sort of,
Yeah, we were thinking of doing it as an informational draft, not a standards track, of course, because there is no set recommendation. It's just informational for the implementers, I believe. Yeah.
Kyle Rose Akamai. I mean, I think this reminds me a lot of the considerations for randomness RFC. That's what it reminds me of. So it's not, I mean, it's not providing, it's providing sort of guidance to implementers for how to properly deal with these things based on the experience, based on the experience of people who've implemented systems that need to use time, and on just like careful analysis. So, I mean, it seems useful, and it seems like there's precedent for documents like this being published. So.
Yeah, so Krishnan, like no AD hat, like I thought the document was useful, like for me, and I think it should be published. Like if it's not published, like keep it on a group wiki or something at least. So just make sure that people can get to it. And I don't, so one of the reasons I thought it's better to publish is like, I don't see this like changing very much. So if I thought this would like be like something that could get out of date quickly, I'll just say keep it in a wiki, but I think there's value in getting this published as an informational draft.
So, but taking my chair hat off completely and stowing it far over there, I find the let's put it on a wiki argument to not be very compelling. I just feel like we put things on wikis and then they get lost, and you know, only people with special sauce know how to find them again.
Yeah. So again, Suresh again. So one of the reasons people say put things on a wiki is like things are dynamic. So one of the things that went actually from RFC to wiki, right, is the TAO of the IETF or DAO of the IETF, depending on how you want to say it. That went from an RFC to a wiki because like we realized that like by the time it gets published, like things are already out of date, right? Like that's so that at that point when something is very dynamic, you put it in a wiki. So I don't see like, you know, time, absolute time and relative time, like definition of that changing very frequently, right? So I think it makes sense to publish it. That was my idea.
Yeah, and it's been a while since I've been implementing anything with time, but I think some of the issues that Anshul is talking about are some of the same issues that we worked on when I was writing code that implemented time in various real-time systems. So I personally think it's useful. Chair hat completely off. So, all right. So I think then with that, is anybody opposed to us doing a call for adoption on this document? Okay, I think we went through what tiny little of enthusiasm we had, and now we're back to square one. So thank you, Anshul. Yeah. So the next thing on the agenda, we don't have any slides for, and it is the Ref ID updates. I don't know, Harlan, if you wanted to speak at all to this. While we're waiting to see if he's going to get in the queue. This particular document started out as 3 different proposals for ref IDs. I asked them to combine all of those proposals into one, and then what happened was that 2 of those proposals are pretty solid, and the third one was more controversial. And so what we wanted to do then was to pull them back apart. I asked them again to pull them back apart. So go ahead, Harlan. You're not speaking. Oh, so it hasn't actually worked yet. You're right. We haven't heard from him, have we? Oh, okay. All right. So, so with that, I will. Oh yeah. Okay. So, that's Meet Echo talking to him. So, Mike. So the proposals haven't changed. They're pretty much as they have been. I asked Anshul to take a quick look at this for me, and make sure that the original 2. Wow, I'm drawing a complete blank. One is I do, and the other one's an IPv6 something. I'm drawing a complete blank. This is embarrassing, but anyway, there's two RFIDs. They haven't really changed. We pulled out all the leap smear stuff, which was controversial. And so at this point, I think this document is also ready to go to working group last call. It's been here for a long time. And when we pull out the leap smear stuff, it's pretty stable. So is there any questions or comments on this going to working group last call? Now, one of the things I'm doing by putting 3 or 4 documents out for working group last call is we have a bunch of stuff to read and comment on. We really need people to read and comment on it in a timely manner. Submitting working group last call comments 2 months after it's completed working group last call is not necessarily helpful. Okay, so with that, if there's no opposition, we will go ahead and send the RFID updates out to working group last call. Excellent. The next one is the NTP correction field. Miroslav, did you want to say anything about that one?
There was a new version submitted a while ago, and the most important change was that
Can you speak up a little bit, Miroslav, please?
there was a new version submitted, and the main change was that it now uses the format of the PTP correction field to allow some existing hardware to support this NTP correction field, so they don't have to support 2 different timescales. And the PTP correction field is using nanoseconds, and so this feels a bit foreign in the NTP protocol, but I think it will make it easier for implementation. And yeah, I think that's it.
Okay. So at this particular document, we were looking to do a call for adoption on, if I recall correctly, right, Miroslav?
I wanted to hear from Tal. I'm not sure if he had a chance to look at the new version. He had some useful comments before, so I would like to hear from him before we put it forward. Okay.
Can I ask you to follow up with Tal and get back with us? All right, thank you. And the next one is the NTP v4 short extension fields. This is also Miroslav.
Okay, this is a new draft that was submitted about a month ago.
Hold up just one. Okay, now try again, Miroslav.
This is a new draft that was submitted about a month ago.
Go ahead.
About allowing short extension fields. It's basically the idea that I proposed several times on the mailing list and didn't see much opposition, but I'm not really sure what people think about this. It's the main idea is that it's compatible with RFC 7822, and there is no ambiguity in parsing. These are the 2 main points, and it allows shorter extension fields to be saved in a NTP packet with MAC and everything together, and don't waste much space on padding, because 7822 requires padding to prevent ambiguity in parsing, and this proposal gets around that by packing multiple extension fields together. Yeah, I would like to hear what people think. This is an alternative proposal to some other drafts, so I'm not sure.
Okay. So I believe what you are saying, it's an alternative proposal to the one that
Yes.
that Harlan had earlier, correctly? Correct? Okay. Okay, so Harlan's, oh, no, you go ahead.
In Jabber, Harlan says he's not happy, but he will discuss it on the mailing list. Not happy with this
With this draft.
with the document. Yeah.
Right. Right. I do. So we had a call for adoption on the last extension field. So I think we divided the extension field stuff into two categories. One was clarifications or extensions on how the extension field mechanism itself is designed and works. And then the separate thing is proposals for new types of extension fields. Everything from this point, anything related to that first category needs to be considered in the context of changing, updating, or extending 7822. So I guess we will take this to the mailing list and see. I would encourage everybody to read it. It is well written. It's clear and concise, and I think it shouldn't be too hard of a read. All right. Anybody else on this document? So the next steps for this document is it's further discussion on the mailing list. Thank you, Miroslav. All right. I don't know if he made it here yet. He was coming from another meeting. Yang data model. Let's see. I don't see him in the room. So we will come back to that. The next agenda item is actually going to be a little bit tough to do if Harlan doesn't have audio. There are currently 4 drafts for extension field proposals. These extension field proposals are intended to be, the guidance given thus far is they need to be compliant with 7822. They are extended information IDO, last DF, and the suggest ref ID. So has anybody read any of these at this point? I realize that most of our active participants, or a number of our active participants, are online. This makes it a little bit tough to do. Harlan has submitted these, and we need to decide on a way forward for them. They've been around for a little while. Go ahead.
He says, not sure what I can say about these. The content is unchanged, and any extension field proposal I've made supports padding that makes it 7822 compliant.
Okay. So I think the next step for these would be to do a call for adoption on them. I would like to look to see if I can like to take a quick look at them to see if there's any way to combine that. We've got so many short documents going through that it would be nice if some of these could be combined. Short documents are great. Okay. Anyway, so is there any opposition to doing a call for adoption on these documents? I saw his comment. All righty. So I don't see the Yang guy here. I know that he had a conflict in another meeting and was presenting in that meeting. So this, and I'm pretty sure I can cover what he needed to cover. We have an NTP Yang module. We asked them to do an early.
Did we just do the call for adoption, or are you planning on doing it, or?
I do all the calls for adoption on the mailing list, so I will do it on the mailing list. So, especially given the number of active, a lot of our people aren't here, so I really wish Harlan's audio was working. There's a little bit more spirit in the meeting when we actually can hear people. Anyway, the Yang data model for NTP, we asked them to do to get a Yang doctor's review, and they have done that. They're going to do they're planning an update based on the feedback that they've gotten, and once they get that feedback, it'll be ready for a working group last call. We won't issue it with the set we're issuing right now. We'll issue it once we have the update. But the review they got was the only real substantive issue, not substantive issue, but the only real issue that they weren't exactly sure is the question about how much detail to put in the descriptions. Should the descriptions be really short or should they be longer? And so that would be a question is whether or not to put any more detail in there. So go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, Harlan says he's concerned he hasn't seen much detail in the Yang spec. Shouldn't it be look more like RFC 5907, the SNMP proposal?
Well, possibly it should be. This is where I would really like people to start commenting on these things a bit earlier, because this document's been around for a while. So I guess I would wait. I would ask implementers where it should be, but that would probably be an excellent comment to make now, sooner rather than later. All right, so now we're at any other business. And I know that we had the leap smear submission. I was going to ask Harlan to talk about it, but since I'm guessing his audio is still not working, unless you want to try one more time, Harlan. I don't see him in the queue, so I guess he doesn't want to try again. So MeetEcho wants him to try a self-test first, and which actually makes sense. I will point out the MeetEcho actually provides a number of tests for folks to try in advance to make sure that their audio and video is working, and that's really helpful. I know it's not a tool that a lot of people use every day, but it and I know that the MeetEcho, I've actually driven MeetEcho guys crazy on a couple of calls where I've had problems, but Go ahead.
Well, okay, so he said, I guess he left the room, so he's going to try to rejoin. But the leave second proposal is a way to accomplish this in a visible way. Nobody has to implement it if they do not want to.
Oh, this is the leap smear, not the leap second. No, he says leap second here, but I think that the problem is that there doesn't seem to be consensus on whether the leap smearing is a good thing to do or not. And I think there's a set of people who feel like we should not be allowing it, and then there's a set of people that say people do it anyway, so we should go ahead and do it. All right, go again. Let's try again, Harlan. Nope. Our troubleshooting people in the room have asked if you tried turning it on and off again. I will tell you one other time when I had problems, I switched from Firefox to Chrome. Not that. Harlan says the mechanism is separate from the policy. The mic is still not working. Yes. Okay. So I think we're basically going to have to take this to the mailing list, because this is basically what we've got going on right now. It's going from one chat to the other. So anyway, with that, there is a leap smear RFID proposal. Please take a look at it. We have a bunch of work to clean up a number of our open work items, which we will hopefully finish shortly. And with that, I think we are done. Look for the mailing list if you're interested in implementing the implementers coordination list. Look for a hackathon effort doing interop testing and implementation of NTS in the March timeframe. And we will attempt to do two virtual interims, one in the, we'll figure out the wins, but, early to mid-December, late January or something like that. Late January, early February. I think the last one that we had was a little bit too close to this meeting, but part of the reason for that was we ran into scheduling difficulties. So other than that, please reply to the working group last calls. Oh, yeah, there we go. Rich says it very well. See you on the mailing list in the interims and on the net. Thank you all very much. I think we're getting some stuff done. It's a good idea to clear out some of our overdue work items. Thank you, everyone, and have a lovely evening. Thank you to everyone who joined remotely. I know it's strange hours for a lot of you.